And note that all members of the town council are present. Cliff Gravier, our town manager, is here, as well as John Apple, our assistant town manager, Molly Daisy, our town clerk, and Will Wharton, our IT person. I'd like to welcome all those who are watching virtually, and hopefully next month we can go back to our normal in-person meetings together. So before we begin, I'd like to ask Mr. Gravier to please explain to those watching how they might make comments or ask questions during the workshop. Mr. Gravier.
You may comment or ask questions during the workshop by going to questions at Town of Bethany Beach.
Excuse me. Thank you.
You're welcome. You may make comment or ask questions during the workshop by going to questions at townofbethanybeach.com. That's questions at townofbethanybeach.com. The Zoom link for this meeting, if you're not already on it or watching it in a different format, can be found on our homepage under Government and Live Meetings. You can also watch the meeting by clicking on the YouTube icon at the top of our page, or again, going to the Government section of our website, going to Government and Live Meetings and Broadcast, and watch it via the Granicus platform. But again, questions or comments would go to questions at townofbethanybeach.com.
Thank you, Mr. Gravier. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the review, discussion, and comment on alternate park signage. Mr. Gravier.
Mayor, Council, when the park was being developed, the elevations, different elevations we had in drawings always contain the park sign as you see it with the lettering in the font that you see it today on the park property. After the park was completed, staff members looked at it and thought maybe one of the things we should have paid a little bit more attention to while we were looking at all the other details was the font and the appearance of the sign. The base concrete background of the sign is an incredible piece of work. It's done with a lot of concrete and a lot of steel, and it's fairly formidable. So I don't think we're going to want to change that, but staff has talked about the idea of maybe changing the font and the wording on the sign to something that maybe stood out a little bit more and was a little bit more in keeping with other things you see in Bethany. To that end, we've asked a local sign maker to give us some different fonts on the sign, looked at an idea with maybe you have something that you'll see here in a minute if you don't have it in front of you, with a little bit of a design along with the town seal. Did not want to replicate a large town seal since immediately across the street is the town seal in front of Town Hall, but wanted to look at something different. We have estimates to change the fonts on the sign of approximately $6,000, and we're fairly comfortable that whatever we do to the sign, if you have an interest in changing it, would be in the neighborhood of approximately $6,000. John, you want to leaf through the designs there? So you have them in front of you. For the people viewing, we're going to go through this exercise and putting them up on the screen. So one of the first things we talked about was the idea, again, of trying to replicate or keep in theme with what we have at all our borders, which was the blue sign in the same blue, do the gold shell, and put the town seal up. When we looked at that initially, we thought that maybe it was a little bit too much, especially since the park is so green, if you will, and quite natural, and it seems almost incongruous. So we went back to the company and asked for a variety of fonts, keeping the brown background, keeping the letters in the same tone of green, and changing the fonts and the size of the fonts and the placement of the lettering. So we had done a number of signs with just Central Park without any adoration there at all. But we've added the town seal, and we have used the heron on a number of our flags. We've used the heron on sometimes on uniforms for public works and hats for public works, and didn't know if that was a little bit different, a little bit of a different look. In looking at this, I don't know if I would go with the seal that size. if I might shrink that or might just take the seal off entirely. Again, it's on Town Hall, diagonally across from the entrance to the park. And here are a variety of fonts, and with the seal. So when we first asked for the heron, they gave us this version. I think it would be appropriate in a zoo. I'm not sure if it's what we want here, but it's a little bit of a different look. We could do, again, the heron in white, a different base, and the green grass that matches the font lettering on the fonts, the matches the lettering. Pardon me. Already done that one, yeah. So I wanted to present these. They're part of the briefing material. They're available with the exception of the herons, which we will place on the web. I'd like you to take a look at this and get back to me with what you think you might like sometime between now and our February meeting. And I'd like to make the selection. Well, not that. I'd like to put it on the agenda to see if you'd like to move forward with it and which one you all come to a consensus about in terms of change, and to see if you have any ideas with what's presented here and any suggestions that we might want to look at also.
Scott? Mr. Edmondson?
I just wanted to say I agree that the current Central Park sign is a little stark and not really in keeping with Bethany Beach. It doesn't speak to the character of the town, or feels very like national park sort of font, and design's my thing. I wonder if like the green is actually part of the issue too, right? The forest green doesn't seem to. First, let me say I appreciate you all throwing away that painting the concrete blue thing, because that was terrible. So I'm glad we're not going that route. I would support changing the signage for sure. I also wonder, like, is the name Central Park up for change too, or are we just saying like that's the name of the park? It doesn't feel very central to me when I think about it. And I know I don't have the whole history of the park, but to me, Central Park connotes like downtown center of Manhattan, Frederick Law Olmsted, and this is not that either. So just throwing that out there. I'm really not trying to push it in that direction. Just saying if we're in for a dime, maybe we're in for $1.
Sure. I mean, that's open for discussion, but the council made the decision, wasn't meant to copy Central Park, but it's on Central Avenue. So it seemed like a good play, if you will.
Maybe we call it Central Avenue Park.
Okay.
Central what?
Central Avenue
Oh,
Park.
Central Avenue.
Cliff, you said that we can't play with the concrete.
I think it would be very costly unless we're going to simply demolish it.
One of the comments that I'm getting from lots of people is that originally this thing, from my understanding, was supposed to look like a wave, and the top end or the tall end just sort of abruptly stops. It's like, could there be an addition to that kind of make it easier to accept or something, which would be an addition to the concrete as opposed to modifying the concrete. And we always come up with green. Is green always something we have to have, or you had one there that was white, you had one that was, I mean, can we see some different colors there?
Sure, the green ties in with the roof on the portico, though. That was one of the reasons it was done. Whatever you, I mean, we can change the color of the wall, we can change the color of the font. It's what you think, but give us some ideas, because goodness knows if we could be at this a long time if we just keep on mixing colors. So
Yeah, and I don't think you want to change the thing to a deep blue or something like that. It would kind of stand out like a sore thumb, I think. So,
Like a St. Anne blue?
pardon me?
Like a St. Anne blue?
Yeah, like a St. Anne blue. No, thank you.
Did you pick that out, Lou?
Anyway.
Did you pick that out?
No, I didn't pick that out.
I understand we're kind of stuck with the concrete. It would be nice if we could add something to it.
I don't remember the wave, but I'll go back and look. I mean, from the earliest days, all the elevations showed a sign like that with the with that font.
And I guess we all were not, we were focused on so many things, the sign
We were
was,
looking at so many other things. The sign was just, unfortunately,
Yes.
even though it's one of the dominant features of the park, was just there for us. So.
A couple of thoughts. I am only aware of a very few, and I think that might be even a lot, but we have not gotten many complaints about the current sign. Since this was on the agenda, I have asked a small number of friends and neighbors what they thought about it, and nobody had a complaint about it. I mean, nobody was overjoyed with it. I am concerned that we may be changing something that we haven't gotten complaints about to something that we might get complaints about. So have we thought about the landscaping? There is no landscaping around the sign. Have we thought about investing in some landscaping? And I know there was something about the lighting early on with the signs, but perhaps the lighting could be adjusted, and maybe that's something we can try before we make what I would say is a major change to the sign, not the least of which is taking Bethany Beach off of it. And I'm not sure why we thought that might be necessary. So I'm just a little bit concerned that we're changing something that perhaps doesn't need to be changed.
The lighting for the sign was improperly spec'd and was spot and not the sort of lighting that you needed to illuminate the entire sign. So we're in the process of changing that, and Public Works was to have sodded the front as a preliminary work before we decided what we might want to do with some kind of very low-level landscaping. So Public Works is still tasked with now getting the lighting right and sodding the front and irrigating the front. It looks better than it did, but it's been very rough, and it wasn't supposed to be that way. So that'll be something that'll be done this spring. The lighting will change, and the front portion of the sign will be sodded. That'll give it a different look, and we can go from there with what we want to do with planting.
I'm only one vote, but I would like to formally complain about the sign. I'd like to formally complain about the sign. I know I'm only one vote, but I agree with Cliff. I don't think it meets the character of the town. Your point's well taken. I think we should get it right this time. If we're changing it, we should get it right. But I also think that, Cliff, to your point, I don't think the concrete is the issue. The concrete is kind of sculptural. It sort of leans a little bit modern. The sign is just very sort of like picked out of a catalog and doesn't coordinate with the concrete. I think that's part of the issue. It doesn't coordinate with Bethany. Doesn't coordinate with the concrete. I don't just announce problems. So I will definitely look and find some examples of what we might be able to do to make sure that the next one, nobody's like, all right, now you've spent $12,000 on signage, and both of them are bad.
But and before, we've had one significant complaint with the usual allegations of lack of transparency, lack of participation, none of which was true. We've had multiple surveys, all with the elevations for the park posted online. But again, it was staff, Brett, Public Works, and I, and I think one other person on staff, looked at it and said, this just isn't, stark is a great word for it. It just didn't seem like it could be what it ought to be at that prominent location. And hence just talking to you all about possibly changing it.
Yeah, to back that up, I think if you take a look at like the town hall at night with the lights on and everything, it's very emblematic of what town is like, what town feels like. Yeah. That sign, which is on the opposite corner but is just as prominent, is just like, oh, well, here's a place where people pick stuff out of the catalog.
And what's made it less obvious is the fact that we've turned the lights off almost immediately and removed them because they were spots. We're now on target now to replace them with the appropriate sort of lighting for the sign, which is going to accentuate what's on it, on the concrete.
Cliff, what is the reasoning for removing Bethany Beach? So you can make the letters bigger, or?
Well, I think when we talked about it, if you don't know where you are by the time you get here, that I didn't know why we needed to put Bethany Beach on it. I mean, so it's Central Park, you're in Bethany Beach. Does it seem like, who doesn't know when you're crossing this intersection that you're in Bethany Beach? Why would we repeat it I don't know. It was just a thought.
Okay, all
And
right.
that allowed the font to change up, and if we pick the right font, be a little bit more dominant.
Well, Cliff, normally I would agree with you, but you can change towns here in the course of a couple hundred feet. I mean, you go down the street, it's another town, another town, another town. So I mean, there's a lot of people who come here.
If that's what you think, please.
Yeah, I mean, and by putting the seal back, you're putting the seal on, you're basically saying it's Bethany Beach again, so.
This is just us with a starting point to have a discussion. So again, any ideas, any thoughts about what you think might make it different, or again, maybe just to leave it as Mr. Shepley suggests?
Yeah, I'm kind of on Patrick's side on this. I personally don't have a problem with the existing sign the way it is, and to spend $6,000 or more to change the sign, I don't know. That's how I feel.
I will say I don't think that any of the proposed schemes are better yet. So I don't think any of these proposed schemes are actually necessarily better than what's there. So I think I think the questions are, and maybe you say, no, we don't want to change it at all. But like, if we want to change it, then we keep looking at options, I think. Yeah. Or if we want to consider changing it, then we can, keep looking at options. It's relatively inexpensive.
And I will go back to the point, once it's lit, it's going to take on a whole different life than it has today. So just keep that in mind.
What do you mean, from a positive or negative point of view?
Well, I think it'll stand out more, and I do believe that it is very plain, very basic, and we could do better in terms of what's on it, at least how it's presented, even if it's Bethany Beach Central Park. But maybe not. Maybe we're just limited, and it would just be, we'd make the change, and it would be not noticeable. I don't know.
I'd like to see, Scott, you had mentioned looking at other options, and I'd kind of like to see what he comes up with, given his expertise, just to see if there are other options. I think it is kind of out of place, considering the town, but I wouldn't just change it to change it, and I'm not really convinced that any of these options are the way to go. But I would be interested in seeing what Scott would come up with.
Scott, could we have 15 or 20 by the next council meeting?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem. But it's how I got where I am, by just saying yes to lots of stuff, Cliff. Good and bad. I will say I actually agree. I think like on the Bethany Beach part, that it is like kind of your first.
Okay.
So maybe there's a way to. That's what I think right now. Who knows once I start sketching stuff, or have more talented people than me sketch stuff.
Do you bill for this?
No. That's also how I got where I am.
Get that on the record.
And Scott, where's that?
Depends on who you're asking, actually.
Does anyone else have anything to add? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gravier. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, everyone. Okay, the next item on the agenda is review and discussion of possible changes in yard waste and bulk trash policy. Again, Mr. Gravier.
John.
Mayor and council, this past year when Public Works made its rounds for the bulk trash pickup, they came across some monumental disasters to pick up. And we printed out a couple photos that they took for us. We put it in the packet there for you. And those are just a few. There were others. And it's hard to say whether they are all from the home here in Bethany, or if somebody's bringing them in from another home they own, to get rid of things, using this service as a dumpster service, if you will. The load to pick up by the personnel involved can be very strenuous. You get a whole crew of 5 guys out there to clear one property, and it's going to take a couple truckloads to do it. So it's multiple trips to the landfill where other people have placed out a couple items to have picked up, and it'll sit out there for a long time while they're trying to concentrate on this one. We've got some current guidelines to abide by, such as no demolition, no construction materials, things of that nature, but that's pretty much where it stops. Other concerns that were raised by Public Works were people will place things out there 2 weeks before the pickup itself, and it'll just sit and sit and sit. We'll contact the homeowner, and they say, no, I put it out there for the bulk trash pickup. So what I've done is met with Brett Warner and Sean Eli. We've gone over a couple ideas about how to reel that in. We've looked at some different townships and see what other surrounding towns have done. I found that coming from Berlin just changed their guidelines by stating you have to request to have items picked up during their designated bulk trash pickup dates. So you have to call in at least within 30 days in order to be on that schedule, and you are limited to 4 items per household. There's some other stipulations in there as well, but those were the main ones that jumped out. Selbyville, Selbyville allows 1 bulk item, place at the curb. This is 1 item per month, though. They do it once a month on a designated date, and 1 household is allowed 1 item per month to be picked up. As you see in those photos, you're seeing 30 items, 20 items, some very large items. So we propose bringing it down to, the 6 items, and putting some different stipulations in place about time when you can put these out, and then also going hand in hand with that, if they put it out too late, too early, if they try to do more than 1 pickup, we are raising the obscure fee for a regular pickup of $47, and we're making it an even $50. It's easier to communicate that. So if it's more than 1 pickup, they get the 1 free pickup. The second pickup is going to cost them at least $50. So that's our proposal for the bulk trash pickup. If you have any questions about that before I get into the yard waste.
Any questions about bulk pickup?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there anything in the code that fines somebody who just leaves it out there? And like if we establish we're not going to pick this up because it's too much. So a guy just empties his house and leaves it out there. Is there anything in the code that requires them to actually hire somebody to pick this up since the town's not going to pick this up?
If it's outside of the bulk trash date for us to pick up, there is. We'd consider it a nuisance. Rubbish, litter, the whole 9. They'd have
So
to.
it's in the code that are they fined per day that it's out there?
Once you notice that it's not going to be picked up as trash, yes.
All right.
But they don't.
Because I don't want people, especially an empty lot, like this guy with I know I'm jumping ahead, but he just, he hires a landscaper. The landscaper doesn't want to, clears a lot. He doesn't want to pick it up, leaves it out there. So, I don't want it out there ever either, so.
When it comes to bulk trash, there isn't anything in the code that specifically states or references our policy for bulk trash pickup. There isn't anything like that in the code. It is just a policy and a service we provide to everyone. We could establish something like that if you wanted to, But I feel like just making a clear policy and guidelines for homeowners to follow, and if it's anything outside that policy, then we'd consider it garbage, litter, something like that, where we'd notice them, give them a certain amount
All
of
right,
time to have
I'm
it
just kind
cleaned
of
up.
curious if there's any, you know, especially like in the wintertime when there's not a lot of people, like say in a street, not a lot of people there, a guy just empties, leaves it there, but there's no neighbors around to complain about it. So I just hope there's a vehicle that the owner would be forced to sit there and pick this up, not leave it out there until whatever.
Yeah, he would if it's not within that time period.
All right, that's good. I just want to make sure.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, John, do we have any limits on size or weight or anything of these, that sort? I mean, you know, somebody could put out a couple of sofas, if I can say that.
Yeah, it's in there.
Pardon me?
It's in there. Size
Did
and
it-
weight.
I didn't read the actual.
Yeah, yeah, it's there.
Talking with Public Works Department, they've been picking up appliances, mattresses,
Yeah.
large items forever. And they're not particularly too concerned with the size of the item, it's the amount. it's the volume.
Number of items. Okay. And we do that twice a year. Is that something you're still considering 2 times a year? Maybe do it in the spring and not in the fall?
I think it's a good service
Yeah.
that we provide, and Public Works feels the same.
Okay.
But they'd like to see it pulled in a little bit more.
Okay.
I personally like the twice a year as opposed to once a month that Selbyville or whoever's doing it. So I would be in favor of keeping that. These are certainly reasonable requirements for this. I'm surprised we don't have those in place already, especially with the pictures of what has
Which is
happened.
out, yeah.
I was just amazed at those. I would say, because I've done this myself, if we do restrict residents to 1 pickup per bulk pickup 2-week period, we really need to publicize that, because I myself have put stuff out on multiple days before during that. But again, I think that's a reasonable requirement in this, and I am in favor of these changes that you're
Patrick, was that
proposing.
your house?
I used that for several years and finally got tired of it. The same with the, whatever these trees are that were cut down. Amazing.
I had a couple of questions. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. I had a couple of questions. I guess I wanted to get clear in my mind, I'm not understanding what we do now, because like Patrick, I thought that for those 2 weeks, you could put out anything you want on whatever day, because we see the trash truck come around not on the Monday, which is our trash pickup day, but during the week sometimes. So you could just keep putting things out as you did cleaning out. Is that what we do now, but we're not going to do going forward?
Correct.
Okay.
And the concern there is that if you're doing it from your home here in your residence in Bethany is great, but to do it one time, if you own multiple properties outside of town, bring more stuff in for our guys to dispose of and more multiple times, trying to get an idea of how to curb that a little bit and ensure we're being fair across the board. This was what was proposed.
Okay. And then how would you, like Patrick, you would let us know, like if we generally get picked up on a Monday, it would be that first Monday that we could put things out, and as soon as that was picked up, you would know not to go back? I don't know how you're going to figure that out unless you go to different areas, different times.
That might be the reason why Berlin said you have to schedule it.
Yeah.
The fellows might be able to keep a tally of some kind. I wouldn't say we'd require people to call in and schedule it or
Right.
make that available, but if they were to just write down the addresses where they make each pickup, number of items even, so we can at least get a better idea of how much we're picking up. It would help us on multiple levels, I think.
Yeah, and without creating a lot of additional work, I guess, for the people on the truck. The other question I had was, how do you determine, I mean, from these pictures, I can determine 6 items here, but I can't determine 6 items here. I mean, people just throw out piles.
Yeah.
So how would you, how would you go about, you don't have to answer me now, it's just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, an individual item, so whether it's a bag or, you know, if it is not, if it is a separate piece, even if it is part of might be part of a piece, but if it is separate, my recommendation would be to call that an individual item.
Okay. Yeah, because one of the ordinances I read from someplace talked about you could either have a separate item or you could have, they required 2 items. The second one could be a bag, but that would count as the item, you know, if you were putting a lot of
Yeah.
small items together. So I just don't know, I don't know how you'd work that.
I think, was it Berlin? Berlin has it, a boxer bag containing multiple items and weighing 50 pounds or less is
Yeah.
considered an item. So if we wanted to itemize that a little bit more and define things, we could throw that into it. Mr. Shepley, to your point, notifying individuals with these would be through either a mailer, social media, on our webpage, on the calendars we send out, but it would be a clear breakdown of what we can pick up, how many items, dates.
I noticed Lewis has one where they say you can have a pile that's 4 feet by 4 feet by 10 feet. And I don't know, you don't want people to go through and measure. And then another place they have cubic yards, and they say it's about the size of an SUV, you know? So there are all crazy ways of doing things, I guess. But I think whatever helps our staff, you know, and without making it a dangerous situation for them, because I know there are things that are very heavy that you see people put out, and you don't want anybody to get hurt either. And it's not fair to the whole town if one person is using a truck and that's all they can fill. So
John,
thank
with
you, John.
those pictures that you gave us, they were just a sample. I mean, was there a lot of this type stuff going on, or was it just hit and miss type? I mean, look, you know, for instance, Patrick puts out 25 pounds of stuff 3 days in a row. Do you have lots of those things, or are we talking about 20% of the people, or?
I'd say less than 20% of the people
Okay.
that do that.
So if we come up with a rule, these rules and regulations, it seems like most people will be following that. We shouldn't have a major problem.
Yes.
I think,
There's a clear feeling in Public Works that we pick up an incredible amount of imported trash.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and we certainly want to stop that. But I remember going down Atlantic Avenue and seeing that pile of furniture there for probably a couple of weeks. It was there for a while anyway, and I kept thinking, I can't believe this person's putting this much out. I mean, there was a lot there.
yeah, I think a lot of it has to do, Rosemary, with what you were saying is education. How do we get the word out that this is what, especially that requirement that it has to be within 2 days of the pickup period? Because I think that's one of the biggest issues I have just visually with the bulk trash is that people come down the 2 weeks ahead of time is the one time they can get here, and they just empty out their house, and that pile of trash sits out there. It's a blight, you know. So figuring out a way to communicate that, and if you don't do it, if you do it too early, like you said, we're not picking it up. I mean, I realize that means the trash is going to stay there longer, but maybe it's a learned behavior. We have to get people to act in the right way.
John, in a case like this, is it worth for the town to put something there and says, you know, we're not picking this up, and here are the people you should call? I mean, this is not something that the town is going to do?
Yes, Public Works has made some flyers in the past for mainly dealing with yard waste. So if they come across bags that are filled with yard waste that aren't biodegradable, it's regular trash bags, they'll put the flyer either at the door or on the bag itself
Gotcha.
somehow.
Good.
So we could do the same with
Yeah,
bulk
because
trash.
I mean, this is obviously a person taking advantage of our
Yes.
our free pickup.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any more on that subject? Okay, John?
The next is the yard waste pickup. This is within town code, and I gave you a copy of town code there. And where we could change it slightly to prohibit or better define actual yard waste rather than a tree service, if you will. So the picture that I provided is an actual tree that was all chopped up. Currently, what we have in place doesn't give a diameter of a log. It states a log, and logs can be picked up. But actually defining log, giving a diameter that we can actually pick up, it would help regulate the size of what people are putting out there, because it could be the same as in bulk trash, where someone cleared a tree from another property and brought it here to have it cleared away for free, essentially. Or they have a tree they'd like to have taken down. They might take it down, chop it up, and you've got these very large 12-inch to 24-inch diameter pieces of log for us to carry out, which is a whole tree. It does not specify the amount of leaf bags to pick up. You could see 10 leaf bags to be picked up or 30 leaf bags to be picked up. But that would be something that we stay with. We allow people to put out as many as they'd like, as long as they're biodegradable bags. The lengths of the limbs that still have to be bundled with twine that we already enforce, but it is restricting the actual size and diameter of the limbs.
Yeah, I think it's important. There is also an issue, I can imagine that in some of the, if you put it in a trash truck, that could be an issue about getting caught in there, causing a jam. I'm sure. Yeah.
Anybody? I have one suggestion, and it doesn't relate to either of these. It's on the trash schedule. I note back here where we have winter residential trash schedule, entire town Monday only. There are days where Martin Luther King Day, for example, and I don't know if there are any others, maybe President's Day. I mean, would it be possible, or is it too much to just add that on, if those holidays, whatever holidays fall on a Monday, trash will be picked up on Tuesday? Because I keep getting calls about that. When is trash being picked up this week? Is it being picked up on Monday?
But it's always been, the next day.
Oh, I know, but
Well, it seems like common sense, but it.
yeah, it
doesn't
seems like
necessarily-
common
doesn't
sense,
necessarily
but
work that
people,
way.
it doesn't work that way.
Well, I mean, but people who lack common sense also don't read.
Well, I
That's
think-
true. That's true.
That's true, but it should be, anytime the town hall is closed on a Monday, the trash doesn't get picked up.
Right, exactly.
I mean, all federal holidays.
Okay.
Yeah.
But actually putting a release out there that's available for people to read.
If they have common sense and read.
They have common sense and read. Oh, you want both.
Okay, is that all on this subject? Is that it? Thank you, John. All right, next item. Review discussion regarding new beach signage. Mr. Gravier? Oh. Oh, it's the John Apple Show.
Well, I tell you, it is the John Apple Show.
Let me pull a couple up on the screen here. I believe you have the verbiage and all in
Yep.
the sheet here. Each one of these, I believe, has that same verbiage. It is the actual design of the signs themselves. And facelift of the added standards, regulations.
These are drafts. As soon as we got them in time for the meeting, we put them out. These were developed in collaboration with Joe, Brett, John's input from his beach wardens. There was a lot of input as to what people thought should go on the sign without having to go to 2 or 3 boards. So there was a lot of condensation. Condensation.
Condensation.
Yeah. But isn't that the wet stuff on the window? Consolidation. Thank you very much.
And condensation, make it smaller.
Thank goodness we're hiring an assistant for me, another assistant. So,
Any comments? I have one. This beach sign here, the first one here, the second one is different. This one does say, "These items are prohibited at all times," and the other one,
we have the correction.
reverses it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
John's already has that. Again, these are drafts, so.
Okay.
So again, I ask you to take a look, see if you're comfortable with what's on here.
I did have one more thing, please. Under here, smoking, should it be smoking and vaping, or just leave it as smoking? I think we added vaping, didn't we? Yeah. Oh, under the definition of smoking. Okay, then that's not necessary.
Well, it could, I think you could be right, though, because just, again, people don't read our code.
Right, and they're going to say I'm
And
not
they might say, well, I'm not smoking, I'm vaping.
vaping.
So it might be worth adding that, slash vaping.
And are we going to do anything about boardwalk rules, or are they, like the bike riding, et cetera? Or is that just going to, it's a different sign, I realize that.
We added a little extra in this budgetary item for this coming year,
Okay,
thinking that we might need to expand on some other signage. The signs in the back of the lifeguard stands are currently up to date. I believe Joe had most of those done. They're in good working condition, but if the ones on the boardwalk need to be updated as well, or we want to add those, I think that would fit into that item.
okay, thank you. I think that you did a great job on this and,
Yes. It's
synthesizing it.
just enough information without too much information.
Right, and condensing it.
Or consolidating.
Well,
Consolidating, thank you.
Mr. Morton went through it, and like Cliff said, I think he sent out 3 different surveys with changes and different options to pick from. So he was able to really
Yeah.
put it all together and have it labeled correctly and in a way that wasn't exactly in your face. I think the sign is appropriate, or the size is appropriate, 3 foot by 4 foot, I
Yeah.
believe. And it'll fit on what we have out there right now.
And how many do we have out there now, John?
I think 19.
19.
And where are these going? They're just replacing the
Correct.
multiple signs that are up. in
They're at the entrance to the crossovers to get onto the beach at each road end.
Each crossover.
Anywhere else?
At
like-
this, that's why we expanded the budget on it a little bit, just in case we wanted to add more as
Good.
needed.
I think it's a great idea, by the way. I think they look great. Even though blue is my favorite color, I would not vote for that one. But
Option 2.
I do like the middle one,
Option 2, that's what I like.
the one with the wave coming on the shore.
Is there a big cost difference between the options?
I don't believe there's really any cost difference between the colors.
I think it's
Yeah.
very close and comparable to each.
Yeah, I'm Patrick, I'm in favor of option 2, too.
Me too. I like option 2.
Kind of beachy.
Did you want to say something? Are we finished with that? Anybody else have something to say on that?
Good job.
It is, and it
So where,
makes fewer signs.
so what are we going with? Which option?
Well,
I like 2, he likes 2.
Well, I like 2.
There's 3 twos.
Scott, what do you like?
Okay, Scott.
I have a couple others I
What's
can
your
throw up.
option here?
What do you want, option 4? You want option 4?
Yeah, well, I'll just make my own option. No, I just thought maybe we could condense it even further and just use Google and just say, "Don't be evil." Just say, "Town, enjoy the beach, but don't be evil." They're all signs to me, so whatever.
No? Okay.
Scott,
Does that help you,
do you
John?
read those signs?
Every day when I walk Lane up onto the beach, I read that.
Read those
Every
signs.
issue, every line by line. I will say, at some point when there's so much information on the
I
sign,
know.
you need it to be like really just legible. And that's my one worry with like that sign number 2 is the background just looks like a nice picture. And if you're trying to get people, I don't know how difficult this is with enforcement, but if like somebody's vaping, for instance, on the beach, you're like, "Did you read the sign?" They're like, "What sign?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if it is blue and white, your eye's going to be drawn to it.
We-
But you
we're-
said it's. Go ahead.
We'll vet with the sign maker the design, and I think to what you're speaking to, with sun and time, we might be bound to go with the darker background. So the illustrations were what they can do, but we need to ask what's going to last, because this is a relatively expensive investment.
Right.
Sure.
I actually like the dark blue also, but I think. Did you say they're 3 feet by 4 feet? Is that so? They're big signs.
They're
I think
big
I think a
signs.
sample is important because you might look at that picture of the sunset at 8.5 by 11 and think it's great, and at 3 foot by 4 foot, you're like, well, okay, maybe we just tone it down.
And we understand that people aren't looking at this as they enter the beach and reading it. It's what we refer back to when we do any sort of advice on the beach to someone, so.
And as far as having lots of information on there, it's better to have one sign than 15 different signs, you know, so.
Or it's got like a little fold-out panel. You can pull that, stretch that out.
We could have hire somebody to explain the beach to them when they come on, you know?
I think personally that when you have that person or group that is uncooperative, and it says, does it say where I can't do this? And you say, read the sign.
Read the sign.
Read the sign, it's right there. Rather than saying, like, where does that say? I mean, I've had people say that.
I think your sign maker would have a good input onto whether or not being out in the sun for a long period of time, whether these things are going to fade, how it's going to, react. So color might be mute for us, our choice. Might be
Yeah,
better for
good
them to
point.
make a decision.
Point, something that will.
Will last a while, yeah.
Well in bright light,
Yeah.
so not replacing them
Yep.
prematurely. Yeah, that's a question to be asked, what works best in the sun? And salt? Longevity, yeah.
Yeah.
I assume they're kind of on aluminum panels? Yeah,
And each company said the same thing. They recommended the
yeah,
rather than fluoroplast.
yeah, they won't last.
Right.
Anybody else?
And I'll bite on the lifeguard ones. You say they were upgraded last year? I believe so. Well, the street I go on, that sign is atrocious. I mean, they use their chalk or whatever to put the stuff on there. It's almost illegible, and you can't read it. I don't know. Might take another look at that.
Probably take a look at each stand, make sure they have the same thing on there. There might be a few hit or miss there.
Hey, John,
Yeah, okay.
is your mic on? Died? Okay, got a question on it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary Louise Embry.
Oh, question. Do you have a question?
No,
Oh, okay. All right. Does that help you, John?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is review and discussion of possible increase in residential parking permit. Mr. Gravier.
Mayor, we're all aware that we have changed our policy on our beach parking lot regarding allowing residents to park with residential parking permit. You have a couple of flyers in front of you from the parking department And the parking department's recommendation is, since it's been a decade since we've raised the price of residential parking permits, that we do so in an effort to offset a little bit of the loss that we've had from income from those beachfront parking lots. They gave me the initial recommendation with an increase of the permit to 50. I asked them to give me another one with 45 and wanted to discuss this with you to see what your thoughts or feelings are regarding this. And if they're positive, I probably will ask Janet to make this a at-the-table addition to the budget on Thursday. Again, it's been a decade. It costs $2.50 an hour to park in those lots, and just a simple $10 or $15 increase for residents who can park there the entire parking season with their permit does not seem unreasonable.
First of all, allowing residents to, with a residential parking permit to park in those areas, it's a big winner. I've had a lot of people just saying thank you, thank you, thank you, especially a lot of the older people here in town. I think it's reasonable what you're asking for the increase. I personally don't think many people will be opposed to that, to the fact that they can still use a residential parking permit to park at street ends. I think it's a good compromise.
Now, are you for the 50 or the?
Whatever I could go either way. It's not a significant amount of money.
The thing that comes closer, a little bit closer to making up the loss is the 15, 250, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first was talking with Janet about it, I was in favor of the $50 one, only from the standpoint that people that really need to have a second car up there, it doesn't seem unreasonable to increase it to, we're talking $15. It's not like we're talking $100.
Yes, exactly.
So 50 gets us closer to breaking even for the advantage of having possibly two cars up there.
Yes.
So I would have voted for 50.
I would not. The $15 increase is a 43% increase. It may only be $15, but it's a 43% increase. I would be in favor of a smaller increase. I could go with the $10, but I would prefer $5 and not wait 10 years before we raise it again. But the $5 a permit increase is 14%. $10 is 29%. When you get up to $15, that's almost a 44% increase.
Over a 10-year period.
Well, people don't look at it that way. I mean, they're going to look at two things. First of all, they're going to look, I think, at the dollar amount, and I agree with you, $15 is not a lot. But some people will look at the percentage increase and say, why are you almost doubling this? I don't think they're going to go for the justification it's been 10 years, but I don't think we should go 10 years without raising this.
Well, if we hadn't made the change for residential parking permits in the beach lot, I would not recommend anything. And it's a convenience.
Understand.
It's a convenience for residents, but this is an incredible change, a massive sea change, allowing residents with parking permits to park in those lots. My only thought here was this increase reflects that and is easily justifiable.
Well,
As
I would
a counterpoint.
respectfully disagree.
Sir.
Scott?
Yeah, I personally, I see the value in the added costs. I do agree with what you're saying about a 40-something% increase is big. CPI right now, year over year, 7%. So if you only increase it $5, so right now, actually, every year for the last 10 years, we've lost money on the parking permits. They cost less in today's dollars than they did last year. So other than any change that we've made to it. So if you only increase it $5, you're really only increasing it $2.50 or something because you're losing the rest to inflation. So I think there's a value added for sure. I think $15 is not a lot of money. I'm in support of wherever we go with it, really.
Faith and Bruce?
I'm fine with the $50 because the card is worth more now because you can park up there at the beach. I think that's a big deal.
That is a big, and that's why we're doing it,
Yeah, I think it's worth it.
because it's loss of revenue.
I've had people say to me they'd pay $100 for the parking, just for the privilege of parking there for the year.
And we're talking about the second pass?
We're
Yes.
talking, the first pass is free. The
First
second
pass-
pass has been a convenience. It's not a moneymaker for us.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
and you
so, I
don't,
mean,
First
you
is
don't
free.
have to take the second pass. I mean,
Right,
it's not mandatory.
I think there's a point at which you want to set the dollar amount for the second pass at an amount that requires people to think about it. At $35, everybody's just, here you go. I don't care. You know, at $50, it's like, well, do I really need that? You know, because then they're not just leaving a car on the street. They're not, you know, whatever. But I'm just not that worried about $15. But I do think the percentages are important. I think some people who see it that way will see it that way. And there's
Yes. They will.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
And the last item on the agenda is review and discussion of events schedule for 2022.
I've given you a draft schedule, and it reflects what we wanted to do last year regarding shows. One of the things we had talked about in an effort to push back a little bit on the number of people we have in town, most especially July and August, weekdays and weekends, is to move our shows and events out to the shoulder seasons. Last year, because of COVID and some weather events, we did not do what we had planned to do in April and May, which were movies and bonfires on the boardwalk. This year, again, you'll see a schedule that reflects that and shows fewer events during the heart of the summer. At council meetings, I've asked you a number of times to come back and let me know after you've spoken to your neighbors or friends to see how people feel about this. And you'll see the results from the survey that Julie hands out at the end of the year. And it seems like the shoulder season has been well appreciated, and there's not a lot of interest in going back to the number of shows or events we had during the summer. We were having events that draw people downtown into that already very incredibly crowded environment 5 days a week. So we pushed back a little bit and rescheduled. And what I'd like to do, though Julie's in the middle right now of trying to schedule different events, is to come back next month and have you affirm for me as a council item that this is the agenda that you would like to follow. I'll send you another one that shows other events that Julie has penciled in. The idea maybe of a family event, cornhole tournaments on the beach is one of her suggestions, an open mic once a week, things like that. But do we want to do that, or do we want to just keep the shoulder seasons open now for shows and movies, events, fires, bonfires, and do less during the summer, or do we want to add events again during the summer? So I'll make it an agenda item for February, and I'll send out the alternative list with more events for the summer. I think, again, certainly based on this survey, that we did a fairly positive thing in moving to shoulder season and decreasing the number of events we have in the summer. There were concerns from people that just come down primarily on weekends. But if you look at the survey, I think the general feeling I get as I read the survey was, well, this is good and then we like it, more than bring back summer events, bring back weekend events. But we were bringing people in on weekends that were where you couldn't move whether there was a show or not, and then having a show on top of it. So,
Anybody?
I guess my only comment is, I think the fall season was excellent. I think possibly April's just a little too soon to get started. It's still chilly. Even early May is still chilly. So I
Well,
don't
the
know whether-
bonfires kind of make sense. I don't know, the movies would have to be almost hit or miss,
Well,
so.
it says concert, so, I mean, maybe a movie might be okay, sitting out there, but.
We'll have a good feeling with fire and ice. We'll see
See how
how
it
cold,
goes.
we'll see how cold Elvis gets, so,
Okay.
okay.
Anybody, no further comment? Okay. I think that does it for the agenda. Does anyone have anything they want to say? Add? Thank you, Mr. Gravier. Thank you, John.
Everybody send color ideas to Scott for the sign, so.
This is your last special meeting, huh?
Okay, let's adjourn first. Let's adjourn first.
We had one question about what happened to John's mic.
No other questions? Yeah, we haven't adjourned yet. Yeah, we're gonna, nothing? Nothing? Okay. All right,
many?
nothing, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Will, tell us